Let's focus on the biggest business news this week. Finance Minister Enoch Godogwana has the task of managing the expectations of all sectors of society when he delivers the national budget in Cape Town tomorrow. And analysts warn that there is a difference between what people might hope for and expect and what reality he's able to deliver. We're now joined by business reporter Ntokozo Khumalo in Cape Town ahead of the budget tomorrow. I'm sure it is sunny there, Ntokozo, but how are you getting the sense that people are concerned about their taxes and where they'll be going as that budget comes through tomorrow?
Good afternoon, Matteo. Indeed, it is sunny here in Cape Town, and traffic was a little bit of a mess, but it's the usual afternoon traffic. And indeed, South Africans are anxious about what will come out of budget tomorrow. And one of the main issues that South Africans are worried about, corporate businesses, small business, and households alike, is issues around tax and the direction that the finance minister will take there. And to help me unpack a little bit more on this, I am now joined by Graham Seggers, who is the tax director at Newzroom. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Graham, as a starting point, obviously everyone is looking forward to hear what the finance minister would have to say around taxes. Our tax base is very small, with a very high tax burden, and it cuts across the board of corporate, small businesses and households. What is the industry hoping to hear from the finance minister tomorrow when it comes to taxes?
Well, obviously, this day at the end of February is something we look forward to every year, where we all try and make our predictions in terms of what we'll see in terms of tax rate increases or potentially reductions. For the last few years, there have been quite a few changes around tax rates, and Treasury has focused on rather trying to get as much out of our existing tax base rather than trying to increase taxes. In fact, corporate tax rates have come down, and so what we're really hoping to see is that corporate tax rates will come down even further. They've dropped from 28% to 27% of the last year, and the announcements in the previous budget speech was that corporate tax rates will continue to come down. So we're not really expecting to see any major increases in tax rates. We're really looking at corporate tax rates to see what will happen there. And we're expecting that, again, there'll be a renewed focus on administration and making sure that the existing tax base are keeping compliance and paying what they are supposed to be paying.
Now, even if that expectation is not there of increased taxes, South Africans are obviously dealing with that triple whammy of increasing cost of living and unemployment and so on. How do corporate businesses and small businesses and households alike, what kind of advice are you giving them when it comes to making sure that they are tax compliant but also work around that to also benefit them?
Yeah, look, times are tough for everyone, and obviously what the hot thing on everyone's lips is the energy crisis, and we'll all be waiting to see what they will announce in terms of potential incentives for renewable energy. Look, the advice that we're giving to clients, or what I always say to my clients, is if you really want to save on tax, just don't get penalized. Make sure you're compliant, make sure you're submitting your tax returns on time, make sure you're doing your estimates for provisional taxes accurately and fairly. And I think, in general, people just need to be aware of what their obligations are, keep informed, seek professional advice when needed, to make sure that you're aware of what your tax obligations are and how to remain compliant.
And we have had this discussion before around those tax incentives, as you mentioned, specifically for businesses and households when it comes to solar. But businesses have also kind of gotten some tax breaks, and specifically small businesses looking out for those tax breaks. Do you think that the incentives that are being put on the table could be worked out a little better, or are we just not giving Treasury and government the chance to actually lay out what these tax breaks are or these tax incentives and how they would work?
I think people aren't aware of a lot of them. So, I mean, the most obvious one for renewable energy is under Section 12 capital B. And a lot of people have maybe even heard of 12 capital B. And businesses that would be aware of that would see that there's quite a generous accelerated depreciation allowance for investments in certain types of solar energy. So the more businesses, and when I say businesses, it can be companies or individuals carrying on a trade, carrying on a business. So it could be sole proprietors or partnerships, CCs, any businesses that are carrying on a trade If they are able to become more aware of what incentives there are out there, they could see some use of it. I think in terms of working it out, yeah, I think, with that allowance, there's a threshold, so it only gives it up to, I think, 1 megawatt of energy production. Perhaps we could see an increase in that and kind of open it up to larger capacities. And then another thing that we're hoping to see is allowances that aren't limited just to carrying on a trade, and perhaps offering some sort of incentive to private households so that they can also invest in just keeping the lights on.
Graham, thank you so much for those insights. Of course, that was Graham Sagers, who is the tax director at Newlands, just giving us some insights into the tax environment right now in South Africa, saying that the industry is not so much expecting those increases in this year's budget, but the South Africans, business and households alike, are under pressure. So it might just do us good to actually go and research what those tax incentives are and see how we can apply it so that, South Africans are not under so much pressure.
All right, that was Ntokozo, of course, in Cape Town. Part of the team that will be giving you in-depth look into that budget speech.